What makes Crystal Palace the ultimate for summer fun? We asked the experts. So are the rides fun? The games? Wow, that looks neat. Well, there you have it. The experts agree. And with our outdoor amusement park, you've got fun in the sun all summer long. Crystal Palace, all the fun you can handle.
In 1988, the Tridor Development Company, based out of Toronto, would start the plans to build the Crystal Palace complex in Moncton, New Brunswick. This project was led by James Begg and his son Jeffrey Begg and would be a $26 million project at the time, and it was built on the filled-in marshland near the Champlain Mall. The Tridor Group, who owned the Champlain Mall at the time, wanted to create a family-friendly indoor amusement park, a 120-room hotel, and a 4-theater cinema, with many more offerings in entertainment and food right beside it, making it the Maritimes' first and only indoor amusement park to be ever built. The Tridor Group was very enthusiastic about this project, and believed it would serve as a resort destination for people to go to from all over the Maritimes. Construction would start on the complex in early 1989, with an anticipated opening of early 1990. The entire complex would be 113,000 square feet, with 56,000 of that being the amusement park area. The Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency would put up $9.5 million for the project, with the Tridor Company funding the rest. Crystal Palace would have their opening on February 15th, 1990, with a huge celebration to commence its opening. They would have magicians, clowns, and other characters roam around during the opening celebrations. And they would even have dancers from Toronto that would perform on the Wave Slingers platform, as well as some other acts to entertain guests on the first days. The key attractions that it opened with were the Bullet roller coaster, the Wave Slinger, and the 18-hole mini golf course. Crystal Palace would become a staple in Moncton for families to visit as they kicked off their first year open.
We had a huge event the night before, like a VIP, like a wine and cheese and champagne, and all the important dignitaries, etc. So we were all pretty stoked. The owners would come down from Toronto, and the owners of the company, they were pretty proud, and they were very proud, and we were all proud. Actually, it was quite a coup for Moncton and for the Maritimes to have an indoor year-round attraction like this. I mean, when everybody talks about West Edmonton Mall, but I'm sure that was sort of our answer to it, I think, on the East Coast at the time. And the first day, like you hope any new business, the first day was awesome. And obviously the first few weeks were awesome, to the point that you've got lineups everywhere. You've got crowds everywhere. There's a buzz. There's a hum. There's a buzz. People are having fun.
I can't remember how old I was when I got the first time. I would have been the first to go see when it opened up and got to experience Crystal Palace with wide eyes for the first time as a young kid. It was insane. Like, for us to we couldn't even fathom the idea of this. Like, we've gone to parks and PEI, and it was like, this is all outdoor. There is an indoor park where there's roller coasters and there's swings, and it's like, mine was blown. And then you walk into this building, and it was just, as a kid, it was magical. Just like this crazy, all the stuff that was in there.
So it was super busy at grand opening. The hustle and bustle of all the kids coming for the first time, and the excitement, and just all of us being excited because it was all brand new, and getting to know all of our coworkers. So that created a good gel with everybody. Most of us were teenagers or university students, so it was a fun first job. So for jobs like ride operators, so I think I did most every ride. So then in the redemption center, so obviously everybody'd go play the games, so we'd have to make change or give them the tokens. And then there was no ticket counting machines either, so we had to count all the tickets that came in for redemption by hand. So you learn little tips and tricks and things that'll make that go easier. And it was usually put them in a row of 5 and then fold them all, because there would be people that would come in with hundreds and thousands of tickets at a time to redeem for whatever size prize. So it's like whatever made counting it easier. So
one of the really cool things that happened was an actual live concert. Maestro Fresh West, who was based out of Toronto at that time, and he was really in Canada, really becoming extremely popular. and they just sort of hit the nail on the head and brought him in, and it was a great time, really. They sold the tickets in advance, so they knew it was basically sold out. They closed the park at supper time, and I think the opening gates at the doors at 7 after it was rearranged, and it started at 8. But the park was packed, and they were all there for the concert. The stage was actually the wave swinger in the middle, the wave rider, and all the chairs, they lift them up in the air, and that was his stage to perform on, was right in the center of the, and it went well, went smooth, there were no issues.
The park overall had a good first year, and it exceeded Troiter's planned revenue, despite lower attendance than expected. They would be happy with the park's success in the first year and adapt and make changes to continue to improve it. They'd also make updates to the signage to make it bigger and more noticeable.
Crystal Palace was the first job that I worked at when I was in high school, so it would have been in the early 90s. Well, I was hired as a ride attendant, so we just basically every day you would show up, you would see what ride you were assigned to. Sometimes you might be assigned to a couple of stations to watch at the same time. And then also in the arcade area, sometimes it could be making change or handing out quarters and whatnot for the arcade games area. Sometimes a shift might be cleaning or maintenance duty, so you might be going around the park and tidying up and stuff like that, depending on the customer levels.
It's fun to think that, like, when I was a kid going to Crystal Palace, you know, you go on the rides. It was the best day of your life. Your parents brought you to Crystal Palace for a day. Maybe you went. I can very vividly remember going as a kid with my cousin, and we'd go on the train 40 times in a row. And then fast forward to working there as a teenager, and you see the same thing. Like, you see kids riding the train 40 times in a row, and like, you remember that, and it's kind of special to think about that.
One of the biggest changes would be the addition of a science center, which would replace the food court. This expansion would cost $500,000 and was expected to draw over 100,000 people on its own. The Science Center would open on June 15, 1991, and would have over 29 hands-on exhibits.
So I was hired at the Science Center, and I remember when they went through the hiring process, they were interviewing people. They really put a focus on you need to have some education in science. We were hired basically for our knowledge and be able to explain some of the science stuff that was in the Science Center to the kids that go there, right? So the Science Center was full of all kinds of different experiments, puzzles, little machines you would work on. There's like balance machine and stuff like that you would try to stay balanced for so long and it would time you. Little kitschy things like that, but the whole idea behind it is to basically make the kid or let kids have a bit of a learning opportunity while they're having some fun too. The highlight was the Van de Graaff machine. So for those that don't know, a Van de Graaff machine is basically a machine that creates electricity, a static type of electricity. So once an hour, we had to do a demo of the Van de Graaff machine, and there's a little theater in the back of the Science Center with the Van de Graaff machine set up on the stage, and we'd have volunteers come up, and they would put their hand on the Van de Graaff machine, which is a big aluminum ball at the top, and then us as attendants, we would turn it on. We would make sure we warn them, do not remove your hand while it's going. But once it was going, that would send an electric current through them. Obviously nothing is going to kill anybody, but it was a strong enough current that their hair would fly straight up. Now, it doesn't work so well with me now because I got my hair short for a long time, but back then I actually had long hair. It was almost down to my shoulders, and it was always a big laugh when I'd do that myself for them first, and my hair would literally stick up, 6 inches, 8 inches up in the air. So.
Crystal Palace would create the addition of an outdoor park in 1993. The rides here would be carnival-style rides, as it was a partnership with Campbell's Amusements. And there was also a separate company who set up go-karts and bumper boats. Some of the most memorable rides were the Ferris wheel, the go-karts, the bumper boat, tilt-a-whirl, and the scrambler. In 1994, they would host an event on Canada Day, where guests could enjoy the fireworks from the outdoor park at Crystal Palace. This outdoor portion would change and vary year to year and would ultimately have its last season around 2007.
I was initially hired for the outside park. That was, I believe, the first year in 1993 that the outside park came to fruition. And that was actually a partnership with Campbell's Amusement. They brought in the Ferris wheel, the scrambler, the tilt-a-whirl, And we designed the outside games based on other carnival games.
Yeah, so the outside one, you had the Ferris wheel. Remember you had the Ferris wheel, you had go-karts. So you had the go-karts, the water boats. You had water boats as well. And there would have been a couple of more, and I can't recall exactly, but those are the three main ones that I remember that we had for rides outside.
And then I think there was this like teacup ride, I can't remember, and then they had the crazy boat or whatever it was called. It was the thing that swing, the pendulum sort of situation.
I really like running the little boats. So there's these little floating boats. There was one for bigger kids and then there was one for little kids. And same thing, they kind of ran around really slow and they'd bump into each other. So I started doing this thing where I'd get in the pool and I'd give them little boosts. So, and I think I called it, I had a term for it, like maybe full blast or something like that. And then the kids, I'd be like, full blast. And I'd push them into each other. So I remember having fun doing that.
My friend Jason did the Ferris wheel, and I remember he looked at me and he's like, I need to go to the bathroom. Can you cover just for a few minutes? I'm like, sure, no problem. So I go over, and there was a tarp that would go over the belt that would make the Ferris wheel go. So I loaded a guy on with his kid, started making it go, and there's a gust of wind that came out, and the tarp got caught in the belt. And the whole tarp, like the belt just ate the tarp. So the Ferris wheel stopped, obviously, running. And I remember Jason coming out from the bathroom and his look on his face. He was just like, what? So he runs to me and I'm there almost crying because I literally broke the ride. And of course, the one guy that was there with his kid had to be on top all the way up. So we had to get maintenance to cut the tarp out. And the guy was fine. Nobody was hurt. But I never did the Ferris wheel after that because it just terrified the crap out of me.
For the first few years, Crystal Palace would also have a gift shop that would sell merchandise for the park and souvenirs from the Moncton area. This gift shop was called Flying Tigers, and it was located right inside near the carousel, and it was the exclusive seller for Crystal Palace merchandise. This would include things like postcards, buttons, t-shirts, and other tourist merchandise.
I was the owner-operator of a souvenir gift shop that was located just inside the main entrance called Flying Tigers. When you enter the main entrance for Crystal Palace, if you're going just to the amusement park, which was sort of facing Champlain Street and the mall, we were inside the door on the immediate left when you went in. We were on the left. On the right-hand side was a convention center, and on the left it was our store, and then after that there was a science center. Flying Tigers was really a destination. We were the only retail store under the roof or the canopy, let's say, of Crystal Palace, and we had the rights to all marketing of Crystal Palace merchandise of any kind. So while they were there, we wanted to have treats and snacks for them, but we also wanted to have merchandise for them so they could go home with a souvenir or a trinket that would remind them of that good time they had at Crystal Palace. And it could be a postcard. Some was a postcard. It could be a t-shirt. We had all kinds of different types of t-shirts and sweatshirts, and we had them in kids' sizes and adult sizes. But we also had coffee mugs, like any traditional souvenir store would be. But everything was emblazoned with Crystal Palace or with Crystal, the mascot of Crystal Palace. And we also had some maritime souvenirs that weren't just specific to Crystal Palace, but so we were a bit of a gift shop in that sense because obviously we attracted a lot of people from outside of Canada. If they were coming through the area, they'd hear about Crystal Palace, or they were going to Champlain Place. We were in the same parking lot, or maybe they were staying at the hotel, have some time to kill, so they want to take souvenirs back home when they leave of their visit to the area. So we had things from seashells and other things that were more maritime specific, miniature lobsters or plush lobsters and those kind of things. But we also sold magazines even, because again, people staying at the hotel, we had a magazine section, soft drinks, beverages, chocolate bars, candy, popcorn, potato chips, whatever a confectionery store would have, we had that. We were 2,700 feet, 2,700 square feet, so it was a big square footage.
Crystal Palace would open with a good selection of rides inside its stores, the most popular being the Bullet roller coaster, which was made by Zamperla. The Wave Slinger would also be a very popular ride that would sit in the center of the park under a massive skylight. In its final years, the park would have a carousel, 18-hole mini golf, a play structure, the Red Baron airplanes, Crazy Submarine, Jumping Star, Rio Grande Train, laser tag, the Sky Flyer, bumper cars, and many arcade games.
My favorite ride was the Wave Swinger. It was fun to run, and it was also like just busy all the time. I did enjoy doing the Bullet as well, the roller coaster, but it was a little bit more trickier to to make run. Like, so I always was a little bit more nervous to do the Bullet. The Wave Swinger was pretty much the one that I really liked to do.
Definitely the monster trucks because it was close to the pretzel stand. So it was all about the pretzels. Anytime I could be close to that, it was good.
I think my favorite ride was probably Sky Flyer. And just, I didn't love heights as a kid. Still don't now. So for me, that was like, you could get high enough up in the air to still be in the air, but not like crazy high.
Laser tag was usually a very popular one amongst people, especially when it was busy.
I would have to hold it to either the swings or the roller coaster. Those were the big divides. Like that's what you did if you had guts.
We would often share stories of people going on the rides, like the roller coaster for the first time. And so sometimes we would share reactions from people, and people going on the roller coaster would go on just the one time. And then when the roller coaster would slow down, you would pick up your little microphone and say, "Do you want to go on again?" Just to get everyone to say, "Yes." And then you'd send them around a second time.
What was my favorite? I mean, honestly, it might even been the Ferris wheel. I would say yes, but maybe the swings. I really liked the swings. I liked operating the swings. Wave swinger, left the wave swinger. Yeah, and when I got a little older and I had kids of my own. It was actually kind of fun to take my own kids back to where I used to work and stuff like that, right? So yeah, and they like the wave swinger as well.
At the time, well, we liked going on the roller coaster because it was just high enough because I don't like heights. So, so that was kind of, this is just big enough.
Crystal Palace would be a popular spot for kids to go on spring break, with them having many promotions getting people to come. During this time, families would travel from all over the Maritimes and beyond to visit the park, as it was the only indoor amusement park in the Maritimes. Similarly, people would visit over Christmas break, making the park a year-round destination for many.
We did packages. We had weekend packages that included everything, and families would come and they would know how much it would cost for them for the weekend. We even had at the end there, we even had people coming in from Newfoundland for March break. They would flew in. We had a 5-day package. They knew how much it was going to cost. It included the food and everything.
Some of my favorite memories they're all around the special events days. From the March breaks, all of them, because we celebrated every single province for Atlantic Canada.
I think the park was a huge part of a lot of childhood, like a lot of people's childhoods. March break was always a really busy time. Christmas time, summertime, but March break was the real time that people would go and enjoy it. It is part of many people's childhoods. It was part of my own childhood before I started working there, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to work there, because I had so many great memories. I had birthday parties there when I was a kid, so they were the best.
The park was also a key place for kids to have birthdays, with many children having their parties at the palace. There were birthday rooms available for rent, with staff to help organize the parties. Many kids over the years would have their birthday at the palace, making it a staple for kids who grew up in Moncton.
The birthday parties were always fun, but a little chaotic, because there would be lots of young to semi-young children coming in, getting their bracelets. And then going out on rides, coming in for their pizza parties and cakes, and then going back all on sugar highs and pumped up on junk food.
In 1998, Cadillac Fairview would buy Crystal Palace in the Champlain Mall. They would give Crystal Palace a fresh logo and new marketing material. The growth and expansion wouldn't end there either. Chapters Bookstore, and Starbucks would open as a new addition to the park. This would mark the first of each of these brands in the city, and they would draw in lots of people. The Science Center would also move spots in the building. Crazy Submarine would be a new ride added, and the park would get a new ride arrangement. And in 2000, Crystal Palace would celebrate its 10-year anniversary.
I would have gone to Crystal Palace a reasonable amount between 2003 to 2008 or 9. So a good like 5 years of getting to experience that place. And it's funny, I made a comment is like I don't admire it in like a Disney adult way where like, oh man, I gotta be in there. But at the same time, like I look back at that kind of time period with a bit of reverence because there were some elements of that time period where that was just like the best time to be a kid.
Said they were going to have this new ride, and it was in the summer, and they were like, okay, we're going to have a contest. All the employees put through your ideas for what the ride should be called. So a lot of people put through different things, and they eventually, whoever won got like a, I don't know, $500 voucher for Cadillac Fairview or something. Like if you go to the mall with it or something. And yeah, I can't remember who won, but yeah, so that's how they came up with the name. They asked all the people that worked there, and they were like, what do you think it should be called? And yeah, they came up with Skyflyer. So
Yeah, it was a really good vibe. So Cadillac Fairview owned Crystal Palace at the time. And our two managers, Alain and Marcel, were great. They were basically managing a bunch of kids, essentially. So they did a really good job at making sure we were, on time, prepared, all that sort of thing. And it was good interaction, like being young, kind of dealing with, people's parents and stuff. It really kind of offered a lot of life skills you wouldn't expect for a job like that. The culture was good. I don't have any bad memories of it, except for, the playpen. I was fortunately too large to fit in there, but there have been times where kids would, use the bathroom and that. So maybe some of those employees would have different stories if they had to go in there. But yeah, it was a really good environment, really good culture. They did treat us pretty well, as far as minimum wage jobs go.
Some of the rides are just pressing one button. So you let everyone on, you make sure if they need to be buckled, you make sure they're buckled, and then you go back to your thing and you press this one button and then you wait till it's over, or you count a certain amount of turns and then you press another button and you let them out. And that would get boring after a while. So I started making it more fun for me and for the kids. So, for example, everyone remembers the train that just did this kind of figure eight, and the kids usually fought for the bell. And so I started doing this thing where if you sat in the caboose, I'd be like, it's your job to make sure that you say all aboard so everyone knows when it's time to go. And so that kind of became a thing at Crystal Palace. So the kids in the back would scream, all aboard, all aboard. So that's one of the things I did to kind of keep things fun for them and for me too. It just made it less boring,
One of the key parts of the park was the hotel, which was the Best Western Crystal Palace that opened in 1990. And eventually, in 2002, it would change to the Ramada. This would be a 120-room hotel with a pool and 12 suites that would have different themes. This hotel would offer resort-style packages, serving as a weekend getaway for families from outside of Moncton.
Well, the hotel was different. The way that it was built like a U shape, it had a really, really nice, big, large pool in the middle. The rooms were all surrounding the pool. And when we first started, people were wanting to have the pool view, and especially that was part of it for the families, but the other part was for nights away because it had team rooms. And what was really popular was the rock and roll suite. I'm sure people remember they had the Cadillac, the pink Cadillac in there, and the jukebox machine, and
So my grandparents would come down to New Brunswick to visit us when we were quite young, and they'd stay at the Ramada. And you know, there's there was nothing cooler than getting to hang out with your grandparents who you don't get to see very often, and sleep in an amusement park. You know what I mean? Like they didn't charge for admission, so you could just walk down there in the morning. You wake up 7 a.m. and we're like, yeah, I'm gonna hit the arcade. Like, yeah, yeah, it was really unique. And like as a kid, you know, there's nothing but other kids. You meet people that you might not ever see again, really, but you know, for a day you've made a new friend. Like it was a fantastic spot.
when it was first built, it was really built to for families and to relate to the. It was related to the park because whoever came to the park, families would stay in the hotel. But that was working only on the weekends. So after a while, after they did that market study, that's where I came in, that, you know, we realized that during the week, the hotel needed to bring in some business and it was perceived as a family hotel. So we wanted the corporate travelers and meetings people. So that's when we kind of did a different marketing and attract that.
The restaurant McGinness Landing would also be located in the building, and this was a popular spot for sit-down dining.
And so my first role at McGinness Landing was as a server. I'd never done that before, but I loved it. I had a blast doing that. So I would work all kinds of different shifts, you know, very much like the service industry is now. You'd come in for a shift and either it was busy or not, but you know, you did whatever was asked of you at the time. One thing that really stands out about McGinness Landing is the Sunday brunch. And so Sundays were a really busy day, and we would have actually an amazing brunch prepared by the chef. And there was usually a huge lineup to get into that, particularly Mother's Day. Sunday brunch was a spread, like the whole restaurant basically got taken over by the brunch itself. And so, like when I say lined up, like out the door of the restaurant and down through Crystal Palace, particularly on Mother's Day. And if you didn't have a reservation, you weren't getting in. The type of food that we would serve, it was kind of like an everyday kind of thing. You could go high-end seafood in the summertime, steaks, nachos. There were fajita nights, and we also ran the food for room service up into the hotel as well. So if somebody ordered room service from McGinness, we as the servers would take it up to their room.
McGinness Landing was known for its Sunday brunch. The chef has been there since day one when it opened. And of course, we were flagged with McGinness Restaurant, which they had those restaurants in Toronto. And we changed the menu. It was quite a nice theme. It was family style restaurant, um, roadhouse. And like I said, the brunches, I mean, they were very, very popular.
So that was a cool little neat spot. I still remember sitting at the table and every like, I don't know what, minute and a half, you'd hear that roller coaster rumble by as you're trying to eat. I remember they had like a super cool brunch that no one had in the city at the time, where you could have, like I said, like it's a brunch. So you have like salmon, and then it was like breakfast stuff, and I mean, I remember going there tons of times for that, and it was just a great little spot. And once you had your little meal, you go play some mini putt when you got older, and then you went to go to the movies or whatever it was. Just a cool hangout spot.
One of the opening parts of the park was the Crystal Palace Cinema, which opened on December 14th, 1989. It would have 4 theaters with 1,100 seats between them, and this was run by Empire Theaters but named the Crystal Palace Cinemas. Originally, you would enter the theaters through the amusement park, but in 2012, the theater would get a huge renovation. This would add 4 more theaters, making the total 8, as well as having a proper standalone front entrance, closing it off from the Crystal Palace Park.
I think I started there as an usher, like just like managing the theaters themselves. And then I worked in the box office for a while, like selling tickets. And so I was off the floor for a while. And then eventually I learned how to like run the projectors and stuff. And that was like back in the days. Like now the projectors are all digital. The movies are like they come in digital files and they get projected. But back then they came on like 35 millimeter film with the sound. The sound was on it. It was a little magnetic stripe down the side of the film, and they were stored on these big horizontal platters, like 4 feet wide. But when they came to us, they came on reels about that big, like maybe about a foot across, and there were like 6 reels for a film. And so we had to like assemble the reels into like one giant long strip. That's how I mostly spent my days, was like up in the projection booth. Notable ones where like the lineup for the box office extended kind of all the way around the amusement park. Independence Day was a big one. Might have been our biggest one actually while I worked there. Apollo 13 was also a big one. I remember I was running the projector when that movie was playing, and I really didn't want to see any even little clips of it because I wanted to watch it for myself. I remember growing up in Moncton and like we didn't get a lot of movies that other places had, right? So it gave us a window, like it kind of made Moncton feel a little bit bigger than it is because we were getting like all these big releases and stuff all of a sudden. And I think it was just like a draw for people like in the surrounding area. Like they could come and spend the day and there were like multiple things to do inside the same building.
Like the movie theater used to have its entrance right at right where the arcade was too, right? So a lot of people would pop in and go see a movie while they're waiting for their movie to start. They go to the arcade. Now most movie theaters like have an arcade integrated in it, but like that was pretty much the arcade for the moviegoers as well. So there was a bunch of arcade games that were just like your typical either fighting games or shooting games or video games, so to speak, that you pay to play with credits and whatnot. But there was also a good number of what they would call the redemption games, whereas the ones you'd pay tokens to play, there's a skill involved, and then based on your score or how well you did in the game, it gives you so many tickets, like redemption tickets.
They used to have this like horse race thing, and they had me doing that sometimes. You know, you like roll a little ball, and if you get it in a, you know, more of the center hole, then you know your horse goes slightly farther. And you know, you'd have the little microphone. You'd be like, yeah, you know, horse number 8's going. You know this and that, and you know whoever won, we had this big roll of tickets, like this massive roll of tickets, and you just like
you bring your tickets to the counter and they have a whole bunch of stuffies and stuff like that that you can, if you have 300 tickets, you can afford this much, or you have a bit less, there's little trinkets and whatnot. I don't know for how many tickets, but there used to be like TVs and stuff like that on the walls that every kid dreamed of having enough tickets to be able to get it.
Crystal Palace had 2 mascots over the lifetime of the park. The first one was Crystal, which was a red-headed girl that wore a blue dress. She would be the mascot for the majority of the park's existence. The second mascot, which would be introduced in the last few years of the park, was Drago, and he was a green dragon sporting a white Crystal Palace t-shirt.
I would travel around to the festivals across New Brunswick and into Nova Scotia. We had a minivan that was designed with the logo. We were passing out the coupons for $3 off a bracelet. And we would dress up as a clown and Crystal to attract attention to the park and have tourists from other areas come see us here in Moncton. The first summer I did it was female because that was the stipulation. But in the next generation of the Crystal costume, or the same generation we had the first summer I did it, she had fleece pants that she could wear. So a guy actually applied and successfully got the role. So I was out partnered with a guy. And so he would also be the clown when he wanted to be the clown day, but he very, very heroically wore those fleece pants instead of the nylons and embodied Crystal, the mute little 4-year-old with the red hair, who I actually happen to know was designed after. Her dad was an artist and he designed it in the framework of his daughter.
Shortly after I was there, I found out that ride attendants or even cashiers could play the role of Crystal, the mascot, and I was just thrilled to do so. People would come in, and I think one of the first things kids would ask for, no matter the age, was, is Crystal around today?
because she didn't make an appearance every day. And when she did, it was just certain times of the day. So I think she had a really big positive outlook for people to visit when they visited Crystal Palace. It was like becoming a character and having the opportunity to really see in the children's eyes this magical place come to life, because this mascot is there with them and interacting with them. Some of the rides you needed an adult if you were under a certain height. Crystal was able to accommodate that if the parent didn't want to or couldn't.
They did like a revamp to the look and feel of Crystal Palace, and the new mascot was a dragon called Drago. In the arcade, like when you play and get the tickets, like I think you could go and get if you had enough tickets, you could get a little stuffy of Drago. They really only got the mascots out on days where it was incredibly busy. So your peak weekends and like March break.
In the summer of 2014, it would be announced that Crystal Palace was going to close. And on September 1st, 2014, the last day of the park happened. Champlain Place would announce that Bass Pro Shops would be taking over the area that Crystal Palace, McGinness Landing, the Ramada, and the Convention Center once held. This announcement would encourage many people to go to the park and have one last ride on their favorite attractions. Immediately after the closure of the park, the rides would start to be dismantled and the signs would come down. The Ramada and McGinness Landing would close on October 30th that same year, leaving only the theater left from the original complex that opened in 1990.
It was sad, but I mean, it is what it is. They told us a month before.
So when it closed in 2014, it was sad. Like, it was really, I felt it was a part of the city that died that day, technically. I was able to bring my oldest daughter. She was 2 at the time in 2014. So we were able to bring her a couple of times, which was very special. But I wish that my son would have been able to experience it as well.
I think it was huge. I know the city couldn't really do a lot to keep it, but I think it did give a lot of people a thing to do with their kids on, rainy days, or, even if they just didn't have a lot of money or they didn't have means to travel to a beach or something. It was close. It was central. You could get on the bus, take your kids there, spend a full day there, and it wouldn't cost you too much. So I think it was a pretty important staple for, families to have a place to go.
It doesn't feel like the same kinds of things exist for kids in this area today in the same capacity that Crystal Palace kind of exemplified. Like they did something really cool for the span of time that they were there. And, you can still walk. I think that's the interesting part about it, is that you can still walk into that building today. Like, if you spent any amount of time there, you could see it all still. You close your eyes and you see it. And I just think that's fantastic. It's nice that they didn't raze it to the ground, that it's not like bulldozed into the dust, that it's still there, but different. All I've got of it now is the nostalgia of it. Like, I'm a 30-year-old man, so like, even if it was still there today, in all of its glory, like, you wouldn't see me going in there and hopping on the roller coaster at 30 years old. But it holds a special kind of lens of nostalgia. I just keep circling back to it, man. It was a great time to be a kid. That was a fantastic time to be a kid.
Crystal Palace was my all-time favorite job. And if it was still there, I would likely be working part-time. Like, it was just the best experience because it was magical. It was magical. Whether it was a child coming through, standing in line, waiting to get on the Ferris wheel, or, a parent looking over at their child, experiencing this, whether it be for the first time or their favorite place to come, it was just magical all the way around. Walking through the park was magic. I've got goosebumps as I talk about it. And I remember myself, like, it was just a magical place.
So I ended up going the last day they were open. It was really weird because, obviously, being an adult, I had saved up a bunch of tickets from all the years from going and winning prizes. And I realized, like, the last week they were opening, hey, I haven't been there and I've been saving tickets for almost 8 years. So I had to cash these tickets in. I actually worked literally across the parking lot at the mall. And as soon as I was done work, ran across before they closed, walked in, got some sort of prize. I don't even remember what it was, but it was super weird because typically you go in, you go to the prize counter, it was like always full of stuff and it was exciting. It was like towards the end of the day and it was just everything, almost every prize was cleaned out. It was just empty and like kind of quiet. It was weird, but it was cool to be there.
I think it does have a lot to do with just having a place to go and then you're with your friends. It gave a lot of kids a summer or a job through high school and university. Place to go with your family and your friends just to have some fun and kick around for a few hours or spend the whole day. And so I think it does have a lot to do with friendships and just family time and good times.
Yeah, it was definitely bittersweet. Obviously, it wasn't as busy as you remember as a kid, and it was definitely slowing down. But the kids, they're in their little mind. They don't notice that stuff, and they're just enjoying the rides, the games, laser tag, all that stuff. They still had a blast.
I think the park was really important, and actually, since I've started reflecting on it for this, thinking of the amount of times I myself was just at the park and going to the movies and just the mini golf, and on a rainy day, you could always just go to Crystal Palace and have a blast, even if it was raining or snowing or whatever was going on outside.
I think it lives on in people's memories as kids playing on the rides. I have memories of playing on the rides. I remember one winter, I think my aunt bought me a season pass. So we were there all the time, probably every weekend for a good season. And I have good memories of that with my little brother.
I think it was exactly what Moncton needed around that time. It was the mall had expanded. There were more things that were happening. People were just starting to do things on the computer and the internet. It was exciting, the early bit of the 90s. It was the last decade before the year 2000 would hit. So it was a great place. I remember in junior high, a lot of the teenagers hanging out there as a place to bump into people from different schools. Teen life would happen there. Arcade, snack areas, a great place to go to for your movie nights, whatnot. And it's a shame that we don't have that right now. It's unless there are some kids that are involved in sports and activities, you need more places that you can go to, game rec areas and stuff like that.
Moncton's always been a destination. They call it the hub of the Maritimes. So I think this solidified it in a lot of ways. And there's nowhere else in the Maritimes that an indoor amusement park would have even been attempted, let alone operated. I think it's really, there's a lot of memories. A lot of people kind of forget, but their childhoods were defined at Crystal Palace. Like for local people, they would go there, not maybe on a weekly basis, but on a monthly basis, and with their young kids. And I remember grandparents going through the different things that you would crawl through, like tunnels and things, and different obstacles, and the grandkids would be behind them. They just really enjoyed it. They had a great time there. So I think a lot of people their youth was defined there at Crystal Palace. We all, I think, thought, boy, this is going to just continue like this forever and ever, but it didn't quite work out that way. But there were some good years in the early years for sure.
The closure of Crystal Palace would mark the end of the Maritimes' only indoor amusement park. But there was still hope for the rides that made up the park. Maritime Fun Group, who owns Magic Mountain, Sandspit, and Shining Waters, would announce that they would be purchasing all of the rides. The Wayslinger, Skyflyer, Carousel, Play Structure, Jumping Star, Red Baron, Rio Grande, Convoy, and the Bumper Cars would go to Magic Mountain, outside in the new Fun Zone in 2015. The Bullet Roller Coaster, the Crazy Submarine, and even Homunculus would be set up at Shining Waters in Cavendish, PEI. And the arcade games would be split between Yippies Arcade in Cavendish and the Tech Zone in Moncton. While the rides and games may not exist under one roof anymore, they are still located within the Maritimes for families to continue to enjoy.
I'm one of the partners here at Magic Mountain and also a partner with Maritime Fun Group in PDI. Magic Mountain is really important as a local destination. So even within our own city, for some people who may not be able to travel to other markets, but also just to have some of these attractions right in your own city is important. So we were approached during the summer, right before Crystal Palace closed. There was not a lot of lead time. It was either late July or early August. The general manager at the time at Crystal Palace reached out for a meeting, They let us know that Crystal Palace was going to be closing, but they approached us with this opportunity. They had a big desire to keep the attractions in the area too. That's something that they wanted to see. And so that was obviously one of the reasons that we were an obvious partner for them. But that was something from the very beginning. It was important that the rides and attractions stay within the region, and it was something that was important to us. Crystal Palace was important in the market for a complimentary attraction for us. We helped draw people to the community that would also visit Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace helped draw people to the community that would also visit us. And, when you first get hit with that news that things were going to be closing, it was surprising to us. It was sad because it's a place that we visited and enjoyed. It's a place that we would take our staff to for staff parties, and was another, facility in the area that was important to the area. And so there was some surprise, some sadness. We became determined to figure out a way to try to help keep those things in the region. So that was a conversation within our ownership group. And it was really just, looking at the inventory we had, looking at the space we had to expand in various parks. And so here we had the space where the fun zone is now. And so we started to look at what rides would complete that package. Something like the roller coaster, for example, was obviously a really key attraction coming out of Crystal Palace. It didn't work well in our footprint here, but Shining Waters had a perfect spot in the front field. And we always felt there was a little something missing at Shining Waters in terms of what you would see from the roadside. And so, sometimes those things just work out when you're looking at the footprint of the Crystal Palace roller coaster on the plans, and we see this footprint we have at the front of Shining Waters. It just made sense. It just worked. And then there was a lot of arcade games at Crystal Palace. I remember going to play the arcade games before going to the movies when it was Empire theaters. So we had a lot of arcade games. We had limited space here at Magic Mountain, but we spread some out here. We spread some out in PEI. And it also was the foundation for a separate arcade that opened in Cavendish called Yippie's Playcays. We were fortunate to be able to enhance multiple properties. So it wasn't just that everything came some things went to PEI as well. And, I think that worked out well for us because it gave people who were loyal Crystal Palace visitors and had nostalgia about those rides a reason to visit different facilities. And I hope it worked out well for the region to be able to keep all of those attractions here.
Well, I think that that's a great point. And, I'm glad that you told me that, really, is knowing that there's still pieces of it out there. They're not all under the same roof anymore, and maybe they're part of different institutions even, but it's just nice to know that, I didn't get burned down or just buried in dirt. It's good to know that there are pieces of it still out there. And, for anybody who's as sentimental as I am about the subject, I don't know. I think that helps it live on kind of as a memory is just knowing it's still out there. There's a level of comfort because those were questions I hadn't even asked myself, what happened to it? So yeah, I would, if I had to whittle it down, that's about where I'd end. Yeah.
The fact that you can still see the rides here in the Maritimes is pretty cool. Most of us all remember how even to run it. I'm sure if you would put me in front of the wave swinger today, I could start it, no problem.
Well, the legacy lives on in all the hearts of the people who super enjoyed working there. Like I said, we've got a family aspect. I am still good friends with many, many people. We stay connected, thank goodness, to Facebook. Many of us have always hoped that maybe there'd be a revival of Crystal Palace in some way, shape, or form.
As a kid, you'd go home after and you'd talk about Crystal Palace for weeks, and you couldn't wait to go back. You'd talk about the roller coaster and whatnot. And fast forward to now where I'm a father, and just a few weeks ago I had the chance of going to Shining Waters with my girls, and I was able to go on the same roller coaster that I rode as a kid and that I operated as a teenager. And just thinking back, it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, yeah, I used to operate this roller coaster that I'm going with my kids on. That was a few years ago, and I was like, that was 20 years ago. Like, I can't believe that it was 20 years ago that I was operating that same ride. And then going on the ride, my girls loved it. And then going home afterwards, and that's all that they're talking about. Now all they talk about is going on the roller coaster and make believe that everything's a roller coaster and whatever. So it's kind of special in that aspect, how it's like it follows the generations. And
I would say it just lives on through memory at this point because, you know, Bass Pro is there now. And I know that's really great for people that hunt and fish, but it's kind of hard to look at that building and not see Crystal Palace. That skylight right in the middle. It's, yeah, definitely kind of like a legend, I guess, around these parts.
Like, there's that joke, a comedian that always makes that we talk about, like, where something used to be as a direction. Like, people would still say Crystal Palace Cinemas, even though it's not attached to Crystal Palace anymore. And, like, anybody my age, which would be 35, like, we all knew Crystal Palace. We'd all been there at least once or twice as a kid. So, like, it will live on, at least from, like, the millennial generation and their parents for, I'd say, years to come.
In this industry, you don't sell a product. People don't leave with a physical thing when they leave Magic Mountain. We're selling an experience, and we're really selling the opportunity to make memories. And so I think the nostalgia of those rides is important, you know, maybe most important for parents that are bringing their kids here. So the parents have ridden those rides. It's an important key kind of childhood memory for them. And in a lot of cases, the kids they're bringing never even visited Crystal Palace. And so a lot of our key people riding, especially those kiddie rides now, never had the opportunity to do it at Crystal Palace. So the memory they're creating is here. The nostalgia that they're going to have is now here at Shining Waters riding those rides. But I think maybe the reason that they got brought here in the first place by their parents was because of their parents' nostalgia on those rides. And so I think when parents are watching their kids enjoy riding these rides for the first time here, it's enhanced by the fact that they've got that nostalgia as well. You know, I think this is true of Crystal Palace, in that sometimes you don't always, know what you had until it's gone. And I think that that's so true of supporting local facilities. Obviously, supporting local attractions. I have an interest in people doing that. But I think it's really important for us to do our best to support local, to visit your attractions that are in your region as well, and help keep them supported, help keep them being successful. And I think it is really true that you don't always know what you've got till it's gone. And so I hope we can learn something from that. And the things that you missed at Crystal Palace, I hope we can make sure that we appreciate the things that we still have.
Crystal Palace was a key place for me growing up as a kid. Many of my first experiences on any amusement rides were in this park. The Bullet roller coaster was the first ever roller coaster that I ever experienced. And it kind of kickstarted this obsession with roller coasters and amusement parks and theme parks. This place holds a lot of nostalgia for me and many others in the Moncton and greater Maritime area. Well, all we have left is memories and photos and videos and stories and friendships that were made there, and going before school at 6 in the morning to ride the roller coaster a few times. The place still lives on, and it lives on in our minds, in our hearts, and in the bits and pieces that are still left of the Maritimes. If you haven't since Crystal Palace's closure, I do encourage you to go relive some of that magic and re-experience some of the rides you may have experienced as a kid. Whether that's at Magic Mountain to ride the swings or Shining Waters to ride the roller coaster, these pieces still live on, and they're still vital parts of many future generations' childhood. While Crystal Palace might not ever come back, and while the park's long gone, we can still live it, and we can still hold on to those memories and remember what Crystal Palace was and how much it impacted us.